The last-ditch push among some to convince 37 Electoral College voters to jump ship, go rogue, and not vote for the president-elect is in its waning hours. The 538 members of the Electoral College convene in their respective states tomorrow to cast their votes. Meantime, on Friday, a federal appeals court in Colorado denied an emergency request to allow so-called faithless electors to ignore the state's popular vote and vote whichever way they personally want to. Professor Joshua Douglas teaches and researches election law and voting rights at the University of Kentucky. He is the co-editor of a new book, Election Law Stories. He joins us from Lexington. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Are any of these last-ditch efforts likely to change anything tomorrow? I mean, if you look back in the history of this nation, more than 99% of electors have always voted the way that their state has gone. Why should anyone think this time is different?
I think that's right. I don't think this time will be different. I'd be very surprised if there are enough electors to not vote for Donald Trump to make a difference. And I think the reason why, in part, is because the electors are party loyals. They're selected in each state because of their activities for the Republican Party. I think it's very unlikely that they'll decide to switch sides.
As you well know, Alexander Hamilton wrote about the Electoral College and the process in the Federalist Papers, Federalist Paper 68 to be exact. And here's what he wrote, that the process is to ensure, quote, the office of president will never fall to the lot of any man who is not in an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications to be the president. The 12th Amendment, however, does not obligate electors to vote one way or another. States, though, do. States like Georgia says if you recuse yourself, if you don't show up, then someone else will take your place. States like Colorado, as we saw with this lawsuit this week, say you have to vote the way the state goes. Walk us through some of the history here with faithless electors.
Well, there have not been a lot of faithless electors in our history. As you said, over 99% of electors have voted consistently with the states. You know, initially when Alexander Hamilton wrote that and at their founding, the state legislatures simply appointed the electors. We didn't have direct elections for president. And now all of the states do have their members, their voters, select who should win the Electoral College. And so I think most people believe that, look, if the majority in a state has chosen the candidate, then the electors should go along. As you said, a handful of states, I think over half the states, have laws that do say that the electors are required to vote for whoever won in that state. And some of those laws have been challenged, but no court has ruled against those laws yet.
And so, Josh, as you know, it was a long time ago that the Electoral College was formed, and it was formed, for very different reasons and in a very different world than we're living in today. I mean, a lot of it had to do with slavery and representation of the population. Does it make sense today in the world as we know it?
Personally, I don't think so. I do think the Electoral College is undemocratic, and this is regardless of the outcome for this election. But we do see this election where the candidate who won almost 3 million more votes is not going to win the Electoral College. I think the Electoral College had a purpose, especially when we weren't in a situation where you could have nationwide campaigns. And so you needed to have some representation for the faraway areas. Now with nationwide campaigns, a lot of people in many states, in most of the states, feel like their vote doesn't really matter because the Electoral College is going to come down to only a handful of states, and I think that's a problem.
Josh, thank you very much. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Pat. This is great. Thanks.
That is the legal view. Now to the politics of it all. President-elect Donald Trump weighed in on the push to flip electors from some earlier this evening. Here's what he tweeted. If my many supporters acted and threatened people like those who lost the election are doing, they would be scorned and called terrible names. The incoming White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, was on Fox News this morning, and he blamed partisan politics.
It's about MoveOn.org. It's about Democrats that can't accept the outcome of the election. It's about delegitimizing the American system. It's not going to work.
Let's discuss all of this with political commentator Jeffrey Lord. He's back with us. And Washington State Elector Brett Schifalo, who is a so-called Hamilton elector. He's one of the folks trying to convince the other electors to vote for someone other than Donald Trump. Thank you both for being here. Brett, first to you. You know this is beyond a long shot, right? And you know that history shows us that this doesn't typically happen. Walk me through your mindset in trying to convince some of your fellow Republican electors not to cast their vote for Donald Trump and therefore, frankly, not represent the majority voice of the people in their state.
Well, first, thanks for having me. And we've said from day one of starting Hamilton Electors back on November 9th that this is a long shot. However, through the work of hundreds of volunteers and many, many conversations with Republican electors, we do believe there's a realistic chance of 37 Republican electors voting for someone other than Donald Trump tomorrow. And what makes this different than the other elections where 99% of electors did vote as they were quote unquote supposed to is the emergency that is Donald Trump. He is completely unfit to be president. He has foreign ties that are influencing him. These are all the things that Hamilton warned us about.
You think that, but millions of Americans didn't think that. And yes, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote thus far by almost 3 million votes. That's just not the system we have right now. And if we want to change the Constitution and if we want to change the system, that's one thing. But do you worry about threatening the system that we know, what exists in this country, basically saying, I know better than all of you who voted for him in my state?
Well, I think the people who knew better were the founding fathers, who put this system in place for exactly this sort of situation. The Constitution says nothing about popular vote, and the Constitution is our guidance in this. And we get an extra sense of what they wanted through Hamilton's Federalist 68, which really does give us a good idea of what they wanted electors to do. So we believe it's our constitutional duty, and it actually keeps the system we have in place going.
Jeffrey, do you think that the Electoral College makes sense in the world that we know and live in today?
Yes, Poppy, the name of this country is the United States of America. The states elect the president. And we're talking here about Federalist 68. The Wall Street Journal took a look at Federalist 68, and I just want to quote here that they talk about, Alexander Hamilton writes in Federalist 68 that the Electoral College is to raise, quote unquote, every practical obstacle, quote unquote, against, quote, cabal, intrigue, and corruption, and other heats and ferments which might be communicated from them to the people. This anti-Trump move is exactly a cabal. It is exactly what Alexander Hamilton warned about. So my friend here on the other end is, in fact, an anti-Hamilton delegate. This is all an anti-Hamiltonian plot to have a cabal to undo the just election of the President of the United States. And for that matter, if it's applied to Donald Trump, it could have been done to Abraham Lincoln. It could have been done to George Washington. It could have been done to John F. Kennedy and Franklin Roosevelt and Barack Obama. And it's wrong.
I want you guys to listen to this ad, no doubt you've seen, that has been playing recently with a number of celebrities making this push. Oh, we don't have it? Oh, that's disappointing. All right, well, this ad was... You've seen, all right.
So did I.
Hopefully our viewers have seen it. Basically, this ad is a number of celebrities coming on television and saying, do what our guest Brett wants him to do. Vote against the will of the majority of the people in your state. This was directed directly at a Kansas elector, Ashley McMillan. And here's how she responded in an opinion piece. She wrote, I won't violate the will of the people of Kansas simply because coastal elites think Mr. Trump tweets too much. Brett, your response.
My response is I am happy for her to do what her conscience guides her to do. All we're trying to do is give Republican electors the knowledge, the support to do what they think is right. We aren't trying to force anybody into voting for or against anyone. We just want them to search their soul and see if they believe that Donald Trump is...
Is that really the case? Is that really the case, Brett? You're not trying to push them to vote to or against for or against anyone?
Absolutely not. It's been something I felt very strongly about the whole time. Myself and Michael Bacher, the two people, he's an elector in Colorado, the two people who started Hamilton Electors back on November 9th. And we had some very core beliefs that we wanted to make sure didn't get violated throughout this process. We've also come out the entire time against individual citizens contacting electors. So this flood of mails and emails, we've tried to stop it as much as we can. This is about educating
it's an
electors.
important
worse,
point
though.
because we know that one of at least one of these electors has received death threats from the reporting that our Rosa Flores has done. It's an important point. Jeffrey Lord, to you, if the shoe
And so have I.
you have.
Poppy, I
What,
spoke to an elector.
hold on one second. I just want to hear what Brett has experienced. What have
Yeah.
you gotten?
Many threats from both the right and the left on this. I don't have anyone in front of me, but threats to myself, my family, harm, sexual assault, all those kinds of things. But that's not going to stop me from standing up for what I believe is a constitutional duty.
Jeffrey Lord, final thought.
I spoke to an elector from Pennsylvania the other day, and same thing. She showed me her iPhone, which in the day had registered thousands, just that day had registered thousands. And she'd looked at them. Coincidentally, she was a sheriff. And she looked at these things, and these things are threatening her life, if she doesn't vote against Donald Trump. There's no room for this kind of thing in America. This is disgraceful. This is disgraceful. And people on the other side are fanning these flames, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Brett, final thought to you. I got to let you respond to that, Brett. He says you should be ashamed of yourself. You say?
No, I trust that he's got his own legit opinion, but I'm just saying this is not what the Constitution is about, respectfully.
I agree that threats of violence to anybody or their family is not what the Constitution is about, and I fully condemn anyone on any side and both sides who are making threats.
I got to leave it there, guys. I'm glad we can have this debate. It's what America's all
Thank
about.
you, Poppy.
Jeffrey Lord,
Thank you.
Brett Ciafalo, nice to have you both on. I can't wait to show you this next story.